The Cradle Assembly had convened only 3 times in recorded galactic history to vote on the expulsion of a species from the interstellar compact. Twice, the accused had been guilty of unprovoked genocide. The third time, the accused was Earth. Ambassador Orion stood at the center of the amphitheater, his human frame small against the towering delegations of the Vashtar, the colon hive mind, and the 6 other founding species arrayed in their tiered galleries. He had expected hostility. He had not expected the vote to already be scrolling across the display behind the speaker's podium before he'd said a single word in humanity's defense. "The matter is settled," intoned the Vashtar High Speaker, his 4 eyes blinking in sequence, a gesture of finality among his kind. "Humanity has been found in violation of Compact Statute 12, reckless technological escalation endangering galactic stability. Your species will be sealed within your home system. All compact technology will be revoked. All trade routes severed. This session is closed." Orion didn't move. Beside him, Lyra, humanity's chief systems architect, the woman who had spent 11 years learning to read alien treaties the way most people read bedtime stories, set her hand briefly on his arm. "A warning. Don't." He spoke anyway. "You're afraid," Orion said, and the amphitheater went very quiet. "Not of what we've done, of what we're about to do." The High Speaker's mandibles clicked in irritation. "Explain yourself, or forfeit your final remarks." 40 years ago you gave us the star drive schematics," Orion said. "Obsolete tech, 3 generations behind your own. A gift with a leash on it. Enough to make us grateful, not enough to make us dangerous. And for 40 years we said thank you and kept our heads down while you cataloged us as a developing client species. Slow, manageable, safe. And now," the High Speaker said, "your engineers have produced a drive capable of crossing the Kesserine Gap in 9 days. A journey that costs us 6 weeks. This is not gratitude, Ambassador. This is escalation. This is engineering," Lyra said, stepping forward now too. "You didn't lose the race because we cheated. You lost it because you stopped running 40 years ago." A ripple went through the colon gallery, the closest thing their hive mind delegation had to a gasp. The High Speaker's 4 eyes fixed on her. "You admit the drive is real." "I admit it's ours," Lyra said. "Built from first principles, in a shipyard in orbit around a planet you were content to let stagnate. We didn't steal a shortcut. We found a longer, harder road and walked it faster than you thought possible. Which is precisely the danger." The High Speaker snapped, his composure cracking for the first time. "A species that surprises us is a species we cannot model. And a species we cannot model is a species we cannot control." There it was. The real vote, laid bare in front of the entire assembly. Orion let the silence stretch a moment before he answered, because he wanted every delegation in that amphitheater to sit with what had just been said out loud. "You're not banishing us for breaking a law," he said quietly. "You're banishing us for breaking a pattern. We were supposed to be the quiet species. The one that says thank you for scraps and never asks why the table is set the way it is. And the moment we stopped fitting the shape you built for us, you decided the safest thing to do was put us back in the box." "The vote has already been cast, Ambassador," the High Speaker said. "Sentiment changes nothing." "I know," Orion said. "That's why I'm not here to change the vote." He nodded once to Lyra. She reached into the satchel at her hip and set a small black cylinder on the podium, a data core, humming faintly with an internal charge. 11 months ago," she said, "we finished the first working prototype of what our engineers are calling the threshold array. It doesn't move ships faster. It does something your civilization gave up trying to do 600 years ago, according to your own historical archives, which, with respect, are not as sealed as you believe them to be." The High Speaker's eyes narrowed. "What are you implying?" "I'm not implying anything," Lyra said. "I'm telling you plainly, in front of every delegation in this chamber, so there's no version of this story later where humanity was hiding something. The threshold array folds space locally without a star drive at all. Point to point, no transit time, no gap to cross, no fuel burn to track. We tested it 8 days ago across 4 light years. It worked." The amphitheater erupted, not in the ordered, procedural way of a compact session, but in real, ragged noise. Delegates rising. The colon hive mind's collective vocalization spiking into something that translated, roughly, as impossible, impossible, impossible. The High Speaker slammed a clawed hand against the podium rail. If this is true, you have violated Statute 12 100 times over before we've even finished voting to punish you for the first offense. No, Orion said, and something in his voice made even the Vashtar guards along the wall go still. We haven't violated anything, because we haven't used it. Not once, outside that single controlled test. We've had working faster-than-light folding technology sitting in a lab for 8 days, and we chose to bring it here first, to this assembly, instead of using it to build a fleet, or a weapon, or a way to simply leave and never look back. Why? The High Speaker said, and for the first time it wasn't a demand. It was a genuine question. Because you were about to seal us in a box, Lyra said, and we wanted you to understand, before you sealed the door, exactly what you were sealing out. Not a threat, a choice. We could have used this to make the vote irrelevant. We used it to make sure the vote was informed. Orion picked up the data core and held it out, not to the High Speaker, but turning slowly so every gallery could see it. Statute 12 exists to prevent reckless species from destabilizing the compact, he said. But you're not voting on recklessness. You're voting on fear. And fear makes for bad law. So here is what humanity offers instead of a war you don't want and a banishment you can't actually enforce against a species that can now fold space at will. Full technical disclosure of the threshold array, shared with every founding species, under the Compact's own research-sharing statutes. Not a leash. Not a gift with strings. A door, opened on our terms, because we chose to open it. And if we vote to banish you regardless, the High Speaker said slowly, then we'll go, Orion said, quietly, and we'll close that door behind us. Because a species that would rather seal a neighbor in a box than share a horizon with them isn't a species we particularly want standing next to us when the next real threat comes calling. We didn't come here today to beg for a seat at your table, Speaker. We came to show you we'd already built our own, and we're still willing to pull up a chair for you, if you're willing to sit. The amphitheater held its breath. The vote display behind the podium, which had shown a clean, procedural tally scrolling toward confirmation only minutes before, now sat frozen. Delegation after delegation began withdrawing their cast votes, not from fear, Orion realized as he watched the numbers shift, but from something closer to recalculation. An entire civilization's threat model rewriting itself in real time. The High Speaker stared at the black cylinder for a long moment. Then, slowly, his 4 eyes blinked out of sequence. The Vashtar gesture, Orion had learned long ago, not for anger, but for genuine uncertainty. The Compact, the High Speaker said at last, has never rescinded a Statute 12 vote mid-session in its recorded history. Then let today be the 4th time something in this chamber has never happened before, Lyra said. You'll find humanity is fond of those. The Speaker's hand hovered over the podium controls. Around the amphitheater, delegation after delegation signaled withdrawal, until the tally read a number the Compact hadn't seen in 600 years. Unanimous reconsideration. Motion to vacate the banishment vote, the High Speaker said. Carried. Orion let out a breath he hadn't realized he'd been holding, and beside him, Lyra allowed herself the smallest of smiles. They hadn't come to the Cradle Assembly to win an argument. They'd come to draw a line, not a wall around Earth, but a boundary across the stars themselves, marking the place where humanity stopped asking permission to matter. The vote was vacated. The door stayed open, and for the first time in 40 years, it was humanity holding the handle.